right now, so that we can send this out afterwards so you have access to these resources. We will be monitoring the chat. I'll also send out my email address afterwards so we can continue to collect questions, and I will connect you to these people so that they can answer them for you. And we're going to do our best to make sure that people are muted so that we can hear everybody who's presenting. And we will try and save time at the end for questions, and we'll monitor them in the chat throughout. Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the presenters and let's get started. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Erin. Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Jacobson, and I am the Special Ed Coordinator for Crosslake Community High School. We have a seat-based program that's K-8 that is up in Crosslake physical building, and then we have our high school online. So I'm glad that Stacy Bender, the online program director, did reach out to Erin so that we can help you guys out. Kelly Dietrich, who's going to be introducing herself afterward. It's just a strange turn of events how people online wind up working with one another, but Kelly and I and Stacy and I all worked together, and at one point last year, Sarah worked with us as well. We all wind up learning from one another, and then we all wind up growing that way. So please don't feel overwhelmed when you're listening to all of this, and please don't feel like any of your questions are ridiculous questions, because it's the only way that you're going to wind up figuring your way through it. We've got really good information. I've had about 13 years of experience in online learning, and it changes every single day. So hopefully you can take away a few things. And if you feel afterward that you still have questions, you'll have my email or my work phone number. Please feel free to call. Sarah or Kelly?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Dietrich. I am a Director of Special Education with Indigo Education, and we serve some of you as well as others. We serve about 65 charter schools in the state of Minnesota, and I have been in the online learning adventure for 20 years. I started in 2000 with Cyber Village Academy, and I have served other schools as well, and I've really just had an opportunity to kind of help people shift their thinking. One of the things that I've done before is back in the day in about 2005 when we were flipping classrooms, I traveled the nation and taught teachers how to do that. So I know how you're probably feeling right now, a little excitement, a lot of fear, maybe a little overwhelmed. And so my advice to you is just take it slow, and we're going to give you some strategies and techniques today that'll help you get things kind of set up. What I won't be able to do for you today is give you due process or legal advice. So we're going to try to stay away from some of that, because you do have a director of special education and they might have a certain way of doing things, but we'll try to answer as much as we can. And Sarah is working on her microphone right now, so we're going to let her do that. And I think Gina and I will get started. We do have a small agenda for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about the places you can go to find some of the MDE guidance, and then we're going to share some things that we have done that we know are working, and give you some strategies that are easy to implement. So this page just gives you the links that are really specific to special education. They are updating on almost a daily basis some of the advice that they're providing. The second link is the school-wide information that's coming out from MDE. They're actually providing it in a document, and they're highlighting in gray the new things. The special ed things are just on a website right now. And so you're going to be able to see some things around due process, instruction, timelines, and then I believe today some information is going to come out from finance. One of the things that happens when we shift from that regular classroom where we're face to face with students is that our roles really change. And I think this is one of the hardest things, because we're used to just being masters of our space and masters of our classroom, but we're really shifting to being a guide on the side and helping facilitate learning for our students. A lot of our students are going to be participating in their general education classroom and that curriculum, and they might need more or different help than they needed before. So the use of paraprofessionals is going to be really important right now, because you as a teacher can only reach so many students for so long. The other piece that's a real shift is the increase in student responsibility. And we're going to give you some tips on how to help them be a little bit more independent. But that's a big shift for kids. When they're used to being told what to do, when they come into our classroom, they're going to have to establish new routines, and their parents are going to be helping them navigate, where we have done that a lot of the time. Learning becomes much more flexible. So this is kind of something that we talk about in online learning: the path, the pace, the time, and the place. And those are all things that we're used to writing accommodations for. We want to help you prepare yourself in your workspace a little bit. You being in a place where you're feeling good, having the sun shining on your face, all of those things are really important, because your students are going to draw from those, and you're going to teach them how to do that. And then also, one of the most important things right now is for you to know what everyone else is doing. What is that school-wide distance learning plan? Because that's really going to guide how you develop resources and instruction for your students.
Hi, Kelly. Can you hear me now? This is Sarah.
We can. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, can you go back to the last slide?
I sure will.
Okay. I teach, actually. I've been teaching special education for over 20 years and got to dip my toe in the online world last year at Crosslake. So, which was pretty fortunate, because now I get to understand a little bit more about how to provide online services, because, I'll be switching to that here in my seat-based school. But you had just mentioned how important it was to know what your school is doing as far as a pacing plan. And earlier this morning, I sat in on my school's pacing plan. And one thing that really stuck out that I think is really important is that they're going slow. And so starting on day one of instruction, they're not expecting kids to sit for 6 hours. They're doing, okay, week one is morning meeting and one academic subject, and then week two adding on. So I'd really recommend that. I mean, obviously your buildings and your administrators are going to probably put out their own plans, but I just think that as a parent and then as a teacher, I think we need to be realistic and not expecting, to throw a ton of work at our kiddos, because that's just not going to work. So that was just my little plug there about the pathing or the pacing.
Yeah, I think that's, probably from teacher to teacher. I taught online for many years, and, I'm on year 20 and I'm still learning new tricks. As I'm sitting with my schools listening to what they're going to do, I have learned about all these really incredible things that are out there that I just won't have time to figure out. But I know the ones that I know, and you'll know the ones that your school is going to use, or you'll get to know a couple. So don't feel like you have to know all of the things. You're going to take this just a little bit at a time, and you'll get better at it as you go.
Right. And I was just going to piggyback off of that. When I do intake for some families, and I try to explain to them that, yes, you are enrolling your child in online learning, and my school's a little bit different. It's self-directed, and the curriculum is already online there. But I let them know that aside from them learning the curriculum, they're learning how to become online learners. And that it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't come naturally for many of them. And it really is a learning process for not only the child, but the whole family, because the parents have to train themselves as well, we hope, to be supportive of their child and kind of follow this guide that we're going for you, finding your workspace, feeling it out, making yourself organized, what's going to work, because what you think is going to work in the morning, where you're going to be sitting or working, you might just need a different space in the morning. There's different times of the day that I'll work with a different student, and she could see in my background, I'm not sitting in the same spot. So you just do what you feel is comfortable and what's going to work for you. And it will take a little bit of time, but you'll get there.
Absolutely. So some of the things that are going to stay the same in your life as a special educator, we're still going to be focused, and our instruction is still going to be focused on goals and objectives, right? So one little due process plug is that your directors and your schools are going to talk about your approach to changing IEPs if that's needed for some students. And that might also be a consideration is, are there new things that we now have to teach our kids because they're learning online? And that might be true. So you're going to gather information and determine that as a team, and you might shift it over time. Also staying the same are those strong relationships that we have with our kids and our families. And that's probably, you know, from my perspective, having been a teacher and a leader, that's probably the most important thing. It's great that I know how to use my technology, but it's also great when I have a good relationship with people and they give me a little grace when I screw it up. Because we all do that. And also it still takes a village, right? So we're tapping into our own creativity, but also each other's. You don't have to do everything alone. So really, you know, using your paraprofessionals and other teachers in your school and in your community. And when in doubt, just ask someone who might know. I mean, it's okay to reach out to us or to other online teachers or communities on social media and say, I'm stuck. What do I do here to serve this need?
Right. And so for me, I can't operate and do the best job that I can for my students unless I feel comfortable reaching out to their gen ed teachers, or whether, you know, they work with one of the other special ed teachers. I need to feel comfortable going to my director or principal. That's the only way that I can advocate well for all of my students. And so there are times, you know, it's kind of difficult. You're going to be communicating a lot with an email, and sometimes the emails come across and, you know, you read it one way, but it wasn't meant to be written that way. So there's only been like 3 or 4 times in my entire 13 years that I read something and I thought someone was either felt like I was being scolded or I felt like they were being condescending. And so I picked the phone up. I needed to hear their voice, and I just said, here's what you just sent to me, and here is how I'm reading it. This is what I am taking from this. Please let me know how you meant this. And that's a very awkward conversation. Thankfully, I'm very comfortable doing that, but it was very helpful to me because I did not want to carry that anger or hurt or whatever that was in order for me to move on to the next step with them. Because if I feel awkward with any of these teachers and I'm not able to collaborate with them well, it's only going to hurt the student. So, you know, just be mindful of how you're going to wind up wording emails. I guess I didn't write that in there, but I probably should have. So it might go under the collaboration. If you think it's something that is possibly someone's going to hear it wrong, I wind up writing in purple in the beginning of the email, please read this as I'm being calm, or, you know, whatever tone it is. I need you to have this information, but I don't want to sound, you know, rude, disrespectful, condescending, and then just write out what you need. It helps. It really, really helps.
Yeah, on my end, I'm coming from probably a bigger district too, but I'm in process of setting up regular Google Hangouts with my special ed team just within my building. I'm the lead in my building, and we have a pretty small team. But so every Monday at 3, we're going to be chatting to check in, and then also if there's other opportunities to check in with grade levels. And so if I have a student that's in 1st grade and they're going to be talking and they're planning a hangout, I want to be in on their hangout. I think Hangouts is going to be, or whatever technology you use, this is Zoom, our district uses Hangouts, is get on there, get face to face with each other, because this is really isolating for us too. And it is still about those connections. And so and using each other's resources and expertise, because there is so much floating around out there. But I think building a strong team just where you're at is going to be a really big priority right now.
Yep. So some of the things that become a little bit more important as we think about distance learning are structure, right? So our students are used to the bell ringing and then they all shuffle around and they get to their class, or they're used to us excusing them. That doesn't exist anymore. Well, it might at my house. My daughter has a schedule and I have one of those nice little dinger bells, but maybe not at your house or at the student's house. And so building a schedule and teaching them how to organize themselves is super important. Our students, a lot of them have take-home folders, but if they don't, even a baggie or a shoebox or something that they keep all their stuff in, and then, you know, teaching them how to create their space. And our kids that had visual schedules before, they're probably going to need us to tell them what to do and have a visual schedule now, right? They're going to need to-do lists. They're going to need us to help them solve problems. As a special ed teacher online, I think the thing I actually did the most was be the bridge between my students and people that they were either afraid of or mad at because they didn't like the assignment and they were frustrated. And so I would help them or the parents have a conversation with that other teacher so we could really get at, tell us about the assignment, how might we be able to modify this? Or they're just frustrated in their environment at home. So helping them with those problem-solving skills right now on the fly, which is a little bit different. Also, planning ahead is really important. So this is also a really great way to use your paraprofessionals. Using your paraprofessionals to help students learn how to use an assistive technology, to help classroom teachers learn how to do that, and also to implement those accommodations and modifications. So a quick example might be you have a science teacher who has done this really fabulous, super complex, impossible to understand video that makes total sense to him, but not to any of your students, right? So maybe you have a paraprofessional watch that video and make some guided notes or reteach the concept to the student afterward. Those things that we used to do face-to-face can really still happen in a distance way, and they don't have to be online. It could be on the phone. It could be, you know, just breaking it down or giving key concepts. So those are things that we got to plan ahead for, but those are things that can help all students. And as teachers start to do that, they start to see the value of just doing it because it helps all kids. And the last thing that Gina and Sarah both really hit on is communication. For you as a teacher now, developing a plan, and so your families and your students know when they're going to hear from you. So maybe you send something in the morning and the afternoon, or maybe you meet with your class like this at 12:30 every day, or 12:30 once a week, and you have lunch together on a video because you're going to miss each other and you're going to need that input. Be consistent about how you communicate so they know when it's coming and how to reach you, but also have boundaries. I'm really bad at that. If it's 2 in the morning and the student calls, I answer sometimes. Or if it's midnight and they email, I email back sometimes. You're going to need to set your office hours and your boundaries. I don't suggest doing what I do because it will exhaust you. So set those boundaries and feel okay with that.
Again, I cannot stress enough the communication, and I sound like a broken record for my kids, and it's the one thing that it doesn't matter to me that they probably are rolling their eyes, but they will not succeed in the online setting or distance learning setting without communication. I just let them know that your teacher does not know you're struggling. They cannot see you most of the day, so please figure out a way to get comfortable, whether it's text or email or chat, or very rarely is it a phone call. But just to teach them that, you know, it's going to be a little bit weird, you know, if they have to call you. Students just really aren't comfortable calling their teacher, but they need to. They have to figure out a way to communicate with you, and the more they do, the better it is.
Mm-hmm. I think that's especially true for our younger students, and parents knowing what those guidelines are and how they can reach us. So we're going to have to retrain parents a little bit, but that's why the boundaries are important. When you're available, when your office hours are. There are a number of technologies that are HIPAA compliant, and so right now, also on that link that I shared at the beginning of this presentation, the federal government as well as Minnesota has acknowledged that there's some relaxed rules on the HIPAA compliant platforms. So I would recommend that you visit that link, and depending on what you're delivering, that might impact the level of HIPAA compliance that you require. So there are particular laws around that. Really what they want us to have is something like an encrypted connection and not being able to see other students' records. So I'm going to hit a little bit of that right now. But there's also a little bit of leeway right now as students are distance learning. So something really important to remember is in your background. So you can see in Gina's background right now is a beautiful picture and her sliding door, but you can also see in mine that there's pictures on my fridge. And if you looked really close, you could see what they are, but they're all appropriate pictures. And I don't mind if you see that my daughter can bend in half and do all sorts of dance moves. But you do really have to consider what kids can see in your background. I once, this is a true story, was teaching students with pretty bad pajamas on, and I opened my sliding door and a chipmunk ran in my house, and I jumped up off of my seat in my bad pajamas, and everyone could see them, and also didn't hit mute, didn't turn my video off, and the kids saw the whole fiasco of me chasing a chipmunk with a broom. We laughed for years about that, but really consider that because it was pretty embarrassing, and I learned the hard way. Fortunately, nothing was obscene, but that's something to consider. You know, how are your students going to be able to see you, and what might be in your background? And not even you, but if you have children who are streakers or other things happening in the background at your house, that happened to a teacher I know this week, make sure that you've got that under control. And it might be a good idea just to have a wall behind you that nobody can get behind or something like that. So those are really important things to consider for you. And also, I think to set the stage with your students that this is new. You're going to be able to see into some people's homes, and we're going to be respectful and confidential and really just talk about that with kids, because I think that's super important. So one other thing to remember is, you know, if you're not used to working online and you're working with a student sharing a screen, there might be other things up. So if I hit escape, you can see every single thing in my background that I'm working on, right? So you have to be cautious about that, because in Minnesota, we really have to think about FERPA, and we really have to think about keeping students' records private. So make sure that there aren't other chats up with kids or IEPs or folders or whatever that has student identifiable information, including grades, projects, and any of that stuff. So that's something to be really cautious about. And in your classroom, you probably keep them in a drawer or you lock them up. But online, you kind of have to think about doing that digitally. Gina, you're muted.
Oh,
there you go.
Okay, so also to flip-flop on that though, when I am working with a student, I want them to share their screen with me so I can see that they don't have, you know, a chat up with somebody else, or they're really not even looking at the screen that they're supposed to be looking at. That, you know, I don't want like Facebook up or anything like that. I need to look at their screen. I need to make sure that they're doing what we are supposed to be doing during our time. And, you know, in the beginning, it might not be that way because you're still going to be teaching them the programming. But when you get into the teaching space of that, just have them flip their screen and then go through it with them that way so that you're actually controlling it.
The other thing that we kind of forget about, and I've been really bad about this week, is self-care. So I'm not going to talk a ton about that because we're going to run out of time, but create a routine for yourself and make sure you get some movement in there too.
I just have to throw in a quick joke. I was talking to my coworkers yesterday and I got an email about 7-minute workouts. And I said, all I could do today was look at the email, but tomorrow I'm going to do, after the first couple hours, I'll get up and do one of those 7-minute workouts. So, you know, just finding some way to, because it's hard. Like I'm not used to sitting in my chair all day for 3 days. I'm used to chasing kids. So I need to find a way to get up and move. And that's what I think I'm going to do.
I just added an example of a routine, and you're going to want to establish that for yourself as well as your students. So this is just one example so that you can see that, and you can just, you know, figure out what works for you. You might even have your own kids in your house, and so you're going to have to kind of think around that and schedule around that and make your office hours around that, and that's a reasonable thing.
I just want to jump in again. I know that you guys are probably thinking that not only are you going to have to make your own schedule, but now you have to factor in, those of you that have kids, school-age kids, you're going to not only have to make your schedule, but you're going to have to make your student schedule as well. And if that's overwhelming you, just breathe. And, you know, if you're worried about your Wi-Fi, you know, see, one of my sons is an early riser, so we're going to have him start a little bit earlier. The high school boy will work later than him, and I'm going to try to work in between. Fortunately, and kind of unfortunately, my house is very long, and the Wi-Fi doesn't reach one end of the house or the other, so we have 2 different routers. I just don't know how much of that, you know, will play into it, but that would be something to think about as far as schedules, because at first I was just thinking about you guys making a schedule, but you have to with your own children as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to chime in. I know I was told that there might be people on here and schools on here, teachers on here that aren't going to necessarily have the option of e-learning or computer learning. So I did put a link at the very end on one of the other resources, and if there's time, can talk about it. And with my own kids too, I sent home, I work in a center-based program, so students with more significant needs, and I loaded them up with things before we were told we couldn't come back, because I know they're going to need different ways to learn. And so we'll probably get into that more, and we're jumping around a bit, but that just made me think about, we also have to recognize not everybody's going to be able to get on the computer or get on Wi-Fi or use this technology.
Mm-hmm. So I want you to kind of think back to the first day of school, and what did you do to introduce your students to your classroom? And you're going to do that online as well. That's probably the most important thing to start with, right? You want to have some content, but you also want kids to know how to function and navigate either in your online classroom or through distance learning, right? So you want them to know this new thing can be normal, and here's what my expectations are. And they're going to trust you because you've already established that with them. So communication is one, engagement is the other. What are your expectations for them and how they interact with you and each other? So you may have to go back to that respect thing. You may have to teach them about online safety, or communicating in all capital letters and those types of things, and just take a step back to reteach, how do we do this in a world that isn't face-to-face? And they'll also need to know from you, how do they turn work in? Right? So if they do a little project for you, are they going to email it to you? Could they take a picture or a video? Do they have to talk to you about it? Make sure those things are really clear in the beginning. And also, our families are going to be struggling. To make your life easier, sometimes it's nice to send out a video at the beginning or even at the beginning of every day, particularly if you're going to have an online classroom, about where to find things, how it's going to work, so that parents feel comfortable supporting you. I think even for those of us who are teachers and parents, this online thing is blowing our minds a little bit on both ends, right? So, and Gina talked about that. So teaching them how to be organized at home and get their materials together is going to be really important. I put an example here. A lot of students might use math counters in your classroom, and at home, they might not be able to do that. So they might have rice, or they might have beans at their house, or something like that. So tell them, you're going to need 20 beans. Put it in a baggie because you're going to use it for math with me every day. Let them know the materials that they're going to need in the morning when you send them a morning announcement, so they can get ready for those kinds of things. And that's going to work whether you're online or distance learning.
So again, I've been an online teacher for over 13 years, but I have never been a parent of a student online. And it was a very humbling and sobering experience. I have a new respect for parents of kids online because my older son, my high school son, he's only experienced it for 2 days, and and hate is a strong word, and he hates it. And the behaviors or emotions that I saw from him were what I have already dealt with my students, and it was heartbreaking because, you know, all of the words and the encouragement that I gave to these parents and that I was trying to use, I'm like, my goodness, I was stunned. So please, you know, use whatever your kind words, whatever you're explaining for, you know, your own students, and, you know, just try to do that for your own kids as well, except you're allowed to hug your kids. And I'm not saying that they're going to hate it. It was just, that was his initial reaction.
I also included in the other resources a link from, I'm a big fan of conscious discipline, and there was a tips for parents on kind of how to deal with that stuff. And so that's a good resource as a teacher and as a parent on, you know, remaining calm and all of those things. So that's in the other resources at the end. It's like COVID-19 tips for families or something like that. So I'd recommend reading through that in your off time when you're home forever.
So we talked about schedules. One thing you can do to help your families is send out a reminder in the morning with links of materials at the beginning of the day. Or if you like Boomerang and you have Gmail, you could prepare it the night before and it just goes out to folks. Make sure, that you have your materials prepared ahead of time. Nothing can cause a student to lose engagement faster than having to watch you surf the web. So make sure that you have those things, or even send them out, or have paraprofessionals do that for you. Document, document, document. So if you try something with a student and it doesn't work, you're going to document it and shift, just like you do in a regular classroom. And also, it's really helpful if you follow up the day to your students, if you've worked with them in a group or one-on-one and asked them to do something, with an email to them or to the parent saying, this is what we worked on and this is what I need you to continue with. So that the communication is really flowing and it's really clear.
So just popping back, the next couple slides I think are from me, but the idea, I have 3 paraprofessionals that I manage. And so, and they're all going to be working and getting paid. I think that's maybe statewide. They might have some responsibilities to the school as far as, even right now they're helping with daycare and food, passing out food, but they have time to work for me. And I am recognizing that they have different skill levels and finding things for them to do that match their skill levels. And so I have of the 3, I have one who is completely not techie versus one who is probably better than me at figuring all this out. So I have the one who's not techie literally creating materials for me. So I'm Amazon priming her some laminating sheets and some Velcro dots. And if this type of distance learning continues, I know I'll be getting more materials to family over the course of it. So she's the one creating the materials physically, and then I have one creating content for Seesaw. So use your paraprofessionals wisely, but find something that's meaningful for them to do that's going to help you. So that's that from that one. But going into sample schedules, I found this one on a Facebook group. There's some really great Facebook groups, and I've been kind of saving things. And this is a teacher or a student schedule from a teacher. And this person in particular is just using Google, so not Seesaw, and linking the blue activities are like required daily activities, and the yellow are optional. But I thought this was super user friendly. It had links to songs, links to stories, links to activities. You could also, if you see there's like a 10 frame thing, that could be something where you could do it online in a Google slide, or have had sent that materials home with students. So I really thought this was a very user-friendly idea. However, I know that we're all in different places. So a daily work schedule could be as simple as writing out 1, 2, 3, 4. And so don't be overwhelmed or think you have to create something magical or be like me and go on and find several different samples of other people's great work and tweak it for your own. And so this one I really liked as a Google, if you're not a Seesaw user, if you're a Google user, this one was a really great idea for that. If you go to the next page, I added 2 other links. You don't necessarily, they're just different ways of writing out. Oh, I thought I shared. I will get access or go back and give permission to all before it's done, and just leave it open. So I could probably try to do that now. But anyway, it's just 2 other work from home. Like I'll hold it up. So this is the idea of one that is more so techie, spelt out. So on this side, it tells you the time, the activity, and suggested activities. And so I'll make sure that the links are shareable for everybody, and do what you think is going to work for your students and for you and for your families. And I know that mine might look a little different for different students, even within my classroom. But I do plan on sending home something every morning with what their expectation is for that day.
For those of you who are not going to have online learning, this might be a good way to do layout of their goal areas and the activities. So this is actually stolen straight from Lakeville Public Schools, loved it. And I know World Learner Schools on this call, and they're starting to put this together, and they are a school that doesn't have one-to-one for every student. So this is a good way that you can be able to take your IEPs and break out your goals based on their objectives and activities and give this card to the student. So this could be a daily card, this could be a weekly card, and you could just slide this in or email this to your families based on whatever you've got for them that day. So if you're really sending home things that are print materials, this is a really awesome way to do that and track it for you and for them. If it's a combo, you might even put links into some of those areas. So this is one example, and you could really modify this and do a whole lot with it. The other thing you could potentially do further down under parent notes is you could track for each day of the week what you worked on or how the student did. One of the things you're going to want to make sure that you're doing is tracking your direct instruction data, because you're going to want to shift your teaching if you need to, or communicate with the family. So this is just a non-digital example that you could use. One other thing that I want to mention that we think about in our classrooms, and this is research-based, but these are the 5 C's of student engagement, and these are going to be applicable no matter where you're teaching or how your students are accessing you. So giving the learner control through choice menus, tic-tac-toe, bingo boards, that's going to make your life easier. It's going to make it easier for students to have flexibility, to be able to do assignments longer. This is a great idea to share with classroom teachers because it gives student choice, and so you'll have less negative feedback from kids. How you set up your curriculum is going to be important too. If a student is receiving something that's so difficult they can't engage with it, they're not going to. The climate that you set up, right? So whether that's through your own communication or the communication with others, and also setting up a community so the students know how to interact with each other online. We're a little more daring behind a computer, and our kids are too, and so just making sure they know how to interact, but then also making that connection between their goals and instruction. I did talk already about the goal and objectives focus. You can really think about some of these things in terms of constructivism and projects. So a lot of your teaching could end the week in a 2-day project. Maybe students are creating something, maybe they have a social skills goal and their job is to create a game, teach somebody else in their house how to play it, and then they give you feedback on how it went. That could take a few days. Really think about universal design and those choices, because it'll make it a lot more flexible for you. And a project or instruction like that could really be applicable at any age. And so it'll give you some flexibility in how you use your materials. Do document your communication with families. If it's due process related, get it into SPED forms or however you document your communication. Do take attendance. Make sure that you know what your school's policy is for that right now, and that you're doing that too. Know what works and what doesn't, and don't be afraid to change something. It's okay to be flexible, and keep that due process river flowing. So you're going to hear from your directors on how you will edit due process, but that'll be important to do.
All right, so the next couple of slides are just, I've spent the last few days looking for free web-based learning activities that I thought would be good for my kids. I know in my district we're still going to use our district provided curriculum. We have things like iReady and iExcel and those sorts of things, but my families also are wanting other fun things to do. So these are free and really user-friendly. And again, coming from a younger, I have K-3 students with autism. These are ones that I thought would really doable. And so I just clicked the link there, and they're free. Did I say that 6 times yet? And so, I won't go through all of them, but you can look through them. And Epic is one we use in our district, and it's completely free for families through June 30th. You can set up your teacher account, which is already a free thing to do, and then send out links to families to connect them. And that's thousands of picture books for students, and you can use those as a teaching tool. I know it is online math. You can assign individual, you create a classroom and you can assign individual assignments through that, from super simple, counting to 5 up through, I think, like 5th grade. Fluency and fitness there's just little videos where you practice your math and reading fluency, and then do little exercises in between. So I thought that would be a fun activity to just change things up, and that's not like scored or followed. You don't pass on or fail on that one. It's just something fun to get kids moving. And then on the next page, Lalio came up a lot. That's phonics and comprehension for K2. Again, free for all. And this is adapted, so good to use with students with special needs. I've seen a lot from Scholastic Learn at Home. Also super user-friendly, super free. Every day they're posting leveled 4 activities that are leveled from pre-K through 9th grade. And so families can link and follow along their science. They can do all of those things at home. So for families looking for things to do, that's another fun one. Brain Pop, I use Brain Pop Junior. Those are all free right now. Splash Learn is a math app that I've been using in my classroom, also free leveled math instruction. And then if you look on that link, it takes you to an article. It's got a lot of ads, but there are literally thousands, I think at this point, of educational companies offering free subscriptions. I would say don't get buried in that. I sort of vetted out a few that I liked and that I will use, but and of course, obviously we're teaching to goals, we're teaching to objectives and using specific materials, but I wanted to find things that would mix it up a little bit for my kiddos, or if they want to just go on there for fun, they can. Then there's a few other things that I found yesterday. This is a document put out by UNC supporting individuals with autism, and it has some really great information throughout and visuals that you could screenshot or PDF share, like on hand washing and on playing games, and it's just got a lot of good content. So if and when you have time and you're thinking of ways to support students with autism at home, that is a great link. Let's see, I'm not even sure what that is anymore. Let's see. Oh, yes, this is the one I was talking about. If you are not going to have access to much online content for students. I saw this earlier, and this is a fantastic group, this Autism Helper group, and they put together learning binders, and they go through and show you how they did it. That works on goals and objectives as a way to teach And so it's like, yes, we recognize, we're hoping that you're checking in on Seesaw, but if you can't do this activity on Seesaw, this same exact activity is in the binder. So if you're wondering how I'm going to do this and don't have Seesaw, don't have online, then building a binder like this that's really clear and giving all the supplies that you're needed is going to be important. Again, I've already done a home delivery of some materials. Some of my families came in. My paras can help with delivery. You can drop it off at the door. So get creative with using your people. And I'm anticipating again that I will be re-dropping off supplies every few weeks as time goes on if needed. And then the last two links were about the conscious discipline family article, and then a link for making visuals at home through Smarty Sticks. That's also free right now.
Sorry about that. I got so excited about your website that I jumped out of our presentation. There's a couple other, I shared a few resources in chat for you. And then there's also the website at the Department of Education. They have included a couple of resource links as well. So when you go to their site under District Schools and Educators and Special Education, they have started to build a list. They have some things up there for DHH. They have some things up there for cognitively disabled students, but they also have some stuff up there for us. So the Wested Educator Resources is another one of those that's just out there to give you ideas on what you can use. But the Northwest Service Co-op Distance Learning is going to have like this presentation to the nth degree. And it's going to give you some instruction on how to utilize tools like Google Docs or Zoom, and just a little bit more robust in case your school hasn't done some of those and you want to explore some of those technologies. This is a self-led one. You can click through it, and they're really short resources that you can utilize very easily. That's the end of our scripted content. So those of you who are online, if you want to chat some questions, that would be great, and we can try to answer some. If you have resources that you absolutely love and you want to do a blip and just share, I think that would be helpful to the team as well. And I believe Erin is planning to send out some information, but I will quickly here create a PDF of this and I'll put it in the chat so you'll be able to download it.
Yeah, so I'm going to share this webinar afterwards, and I can also in that email send out the links that are in the chat as well as the PDF of this slide. So we have 5-10 minutes here before our next webinar starts. Folks who are here for the special ed webinar, what questions do you have for our presenters while we have them? Again, knowing that you can email stuff to me and I can disperse as we go forward too. Oh, looks like we have a question in the chat. As a contract employee, OT, do you have any idea about how we fill our daily hours if, say, we send home a personalized learning card? So they have 32 hours a week. How do they get there if they've got, that's a great question. Thoughts?
Yeah, that is a great question. The MDE is actually in that fiscal update that's coming. They're going to provide a little bit of guidance to schools on how to do that. If you haven't met Paul Farron, he talks super fast and you have to pay very close attention. I adore him. I think he's awesome. And so when he sent me what he was going to send out, I pushed back and said, what about? So one of the things that is going to be addressed is related service providers and contracted service providers. When you are billing for the creation of content, it is similar to an indirect service. So it would be kind of like a prep time. So one of the things that I think teams are going to really have to consider as they move forward with IEP amendments that are required are the shift in direct and indirect services. So we're going to be doing maybe a little more indirect than we used to do. But when you're creating those materials, if you're billing, it's a billable service because you're creating learning materials for students. And so that's something that our charters are going to have to get ready for. But in the guidance, they're going to provide some information about kind of what to expect. And so if, for example, we have been paying a provider 20 hours a week, then we're going to probably need to figure out how they engage with our students at a similar rate, because our students might still need those services. And that's going to be a lot of school discussion and some more information that's going to come out. I think as they figure things out and they get some of these questions, they're going to continue to provide guidance, is how I understand it.
Great, thank you. Yes, we will email out the slides and links, and also this webinar. We're doing a recording of this. Oh, is the information coming out as a doc or is it a webinar? The stuff coming out from MDE will be issued as a doc.
So the links that I had shared on sample schedules should be public to everybody that has the link at this point. You would need to make a copy in your own Google Docs before you would be able to adjust it at all. So go ahead and look at it. If for some reason I didn't figure it out, then just email, or an email will come to me and I'll work on it some more. I was trying to do it on the fly while still listening and being a participant. So, but I did change it to anyone with a link can view. So just make a copy and adjust it on your side.
Oh, so I just got a message. So that's a great point. If you want me to send this directly to you, you need to drop your email in the group chat, or just send it to me privately, which you can also do in the chat here. Because when I sent out this announcement, I only sent it to school leaders and board chairs. So if you want to get this directly, make sure you send me your email address, because otherwise you're going to have to just chase down your school leader to try and get them to forward it to you. So reach out if you want it directly.
Yep. So Julie asked a question about IEP meetings, and IEP meetings, we've been ordered to hold them through conference call or some other means. One of the components of your school's distance learning plan has to be how you're going to hold those kind of meetings. And so this is acceptable. You can do just a conference call. You could, do a Google Meet, anything like that that's a conference call. My advice to you though is not to do it in an open room like this back to back to back, because you're going to have parents who pop in and might hear other kids' meetings. So make sure that you set up each meeting separately as a separate meeting. Another thing that you're going to want to do is ask parents if you can have their permission to email the IEP to them and have them respond to you through email and say that that's okay, so that you can send them the last IEP, so that when you're meeting together as a team, everyone can look at it. And then something that's super helpful is to send out an agenda ahead of time so that everyone on the call is following the agenda. You're taking notes during the meeting. That absolutely has to happen, and that everyone has access to the same kind of content. So those are ways that those online meetings can run pretty fluidly. And if you create an agenda and indicate who's talking, each person will have a chance to provide information. The MDE and legal counsel has said that we follow the same procedures for meeting excusal. So if somebody's not going to be there, then you would follow those same procedures for meeting excusal. So think about that, how you're going to navigate that, and the more prepared you can be and send things out, the better the meeting will go.
Right. I didn't want to go in that direction yet, only because I wasn't quite sure how each district wanted to handle that, if they wanted everyone to use the same platform, if you just had to use Google Hangouts, if they wanted to use Zoom, if they, so I know that the district that my children are in right now are still even just trying to iron that out.
Stephanie asked a question about students who have voc rehab. That's not something I can answer. I think voc rehab would also have the ability to do some of their exploration activities in a distance learning kind of a way, but they're going to have to figure that out. And I think that you as a team are going to have to talk about that. One of the things you can be doing this week is connecting with families to find out what kind of access they do have. And that's going to help you plan, but it'll also help you as an IEP manager be able to manage the team. So please don't forget that you've got these related service providers and these other people out there that need to know what's going on. It could be super helpful if you have more than one special ed teacher in your school to figure out who's going to be the point person who just forwards all these things to our related service providers, because that way they get, you make sure that they've got all the information. Some of these things are just unknown. I think we're just going to get better at it as we go. What other questions are out there? I hope I didn't miss any that came through. There's a lot of email addresses that came through.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through. Looks like
I think the last question was about the voc rehab.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Well, I think that we need to get ready to transition to, ooh, am I echoing for everybody else too?
I just saw someone asked about good resources for helping teach social skills for EBD students. I think that there'll be an option for questions to be compiled and sent to me. I do have a lot of experience with social skills, and there are some free online places for that as well right now. So while it's probably too long for me to go through it right now, I'd be happy to help with that question moving forward.
You can also try to truly modify. Oh, I'm echoing. What you're already using.
Yeah.
There's also some neat things out there. Ooh, I'm echoing too. If y'all can hit me, that would be helpful. Somebody might have a double thing going. But Emotional ABCs is a site. Thrively is a site that has some scenarios on it that might be more applicable for older students. And I think that those kind of response type of journals or those small group kind of scenarios right now work really well. And so don't be afraid also to have students practicing these things until, at home with their family. Pamela asked a question about initials, and I'm not going to answer that. I am going to tell you to go back to the MDE guidance link and talk with your director of special ed. The answer's in the MDE guidance link, though. I can assure you of that.
Oh, but it's more fun to tell people the answer, isn't it? No, I'm not giving an answer.
I think that each school is going to have a plan, and it's going to be included in your distance learning plan. So I don't want to give you information that conflicts with that.
Correct.
As much
All
as
right,
I would
everybody,
like to.
we need to transition to our next webinar. So thank you so much to our SPED team, Sarah and Kelly and, Gina. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone else, please email me. I put my email address in the chat. If you have additional questions, I'll pass them on to our presenters. We will get your emails and send out this presentation. And thank you again, everybody, for participating. I appreciate it. All right, thanks everyone. We'll give me 2 minutes and we'll be back for the next one, which is about early learners. Thanks.